So today we're going to look at 5 eggshell shapes made by Homer Laughlin in the late 1930s and early 1940s. They are Nautilus eggshell, swing eggshell, theme eggshell, Georgian eggshell, and Andover. Our first one was made in 1937, Eggshell Nautilus, and what they did is they took their Nautilus ivory shape. We looked at this in video number 10. I believe it was video number 10. It has the little shell handles and finials and scroll feet. And they made a simpler version with a solid foot and more traditional handles and finials. They did this to all the hollowware. You can see a casserole here and the creamer with its solid foot. The Nautilus Ivory line did not have a teapot, so they added one in Eggshell Nautilus. The egg cup was picked up from Wells and done in the special lightweight eggshell body. The shakers, this has an Eggshell Nautilus pattern on it, but these come from Swing, which we're going to look at in a moment. And of course all the flatware just directly comes from Nautilus Ivory. But everything you see here today is going to be decalware in this lightweight body, this eggshell ware. The second one, swing eggshell, also comes from 1937. It has these special little handles and finials that are made out of different colored clays. This is the blue clay, the same blue that you saw in Craft Blue in the last video, and pink from Craft Pink. And there's a special Celadon green that we see on the after dinner pots and coffee pot. And then there's just the plain white ones. This pattern is called Colonial Kitchen. You either love this pattern or you hate it. This comes from 1946. Pretty late for swing eggshell. Most of the swing patterns were discontinued in the early 1940s. They had a lot of trouble with this one, with cracking and breaking of these handles and finials because they're so thin and delicate. They didn't have a sauce boat because of those handles and finials would break so easily, so they made this covered sauce dish. And we've not seen a covered sauce dish since about 1920 or so with Republic and Empress. This one has the older swing eggshell marking on it. That's from 1941, HLC swing eggshell. The sugar bowl we looked at a moment ago has the second one, which just says plain eggshell. There's a reason for that. We'll look at that when we get to Andover. Swing is the second dinnerware shape to have this oblong utility tray or celery tray. Of course, it looks very much like Fiesta's. This one comes from 38. Swing is aptly named because this is, of course, the big band jazz era swing. We've got some plates in the back. It was originally called convex when it was under development because of this special convex rim. The Mexican themed decal plate back there is done by an outside decorator. And this swing eggshell plate has English Garden, which was originally used on Century and looks more appropriate on the Century shape. It looks somewhat odd with those bottom decals at a slight angle. But you can find English Century on Swing, as you see here. As I said, the line did not last much into the 1940s, although you can find demi-tasse sets and demi-tasse cups and saucers into the 1950s. Here again we see the Wells egg cup picked up and done in the special talc body or eggshell body. Theme eggshell was next in 1939. The original intent was to take this fruit border and make it in a blue clay like jasperware or wedgwood. The blue clay would then be applied to a Nautilus eggshell plate and then given a clear glaze and then decorated. However, after making some trowels on some plates and some teacups, they decided to just make it part of the mold. So it's just one strike and then decorated. And that's done on both the flatware and the hollowware. One thing you'll notice about theme eggshell, none of these pieces I have out have any gold or platinum trim, and that's true for most of the treatments on theme eggshell. It's just plain decalware with no added embellishment. There are 2 markings on theme eggshell. I only have one to show you, the more common wreath marking, and this one's from 1946. Theme Eggshell has salt and pepper shakers. It's funny about the salt and peppers. When we looked at Fiesta, Fiesta was the first line to have them, and then Harlequin, then Tango, and then Swing, then Theme Eggshell, and we're going to see them again in Georgian Eggshell. So we have a succession of lines that have them, and all of a sudden they stop. And the Swing Eggshell shakers become sort of the go-to shakers. The swing shape you will see in Rhythm and Virginia Rose sets. Our next eggshell line, Georgian Eggshell, was 1940. It took all the shapes from the Georgian Ivory line. Again, we saw that in video number 10. There were several pieces that weren't in that particular shape that had to be added to this one. And that was the lug soup, the teapot, the salt and pepper shakers, the chop plate, the salad nappy, the 8-inch square plate, and the demi-tasse cup and saucer. And here we see the salt and pepper shakers. And of course the last one is Andover. And this is from 1941. It was made for Carson, Peary and Scott Company to be resold. Has a distinctive feature, this little foot with ribs on it, as you can see on the gravy fast stand here. And you can see on the creamer. This particular Andover piece was decorated by an outside company. And then we have a blank casserole. You can see its distinctive foot. And it has the second swing eggshell marking, the plain eggshell marking from 1941. And this is why it was used on Swing, because Andover uses Swing's flatware. So since they shared flatware, they changed the marking to a plain eggshell back stamp. And here we see a Swing teapot with the treatment number A1, which Reed always called ribbon and star. This one should be marked with a 1941 back stamp. Most of your Andover will have a marking like this one from 1941. And we have a little memo here dated June 1st, 1942, and it talks a little bit about the pattern and treatment number A1. And it says description of items to be used on Andover shape orders. And it has the Andover shapes here. The covered casserole, the creamer, the cream soup cup, the fruit cup, the nappy, the gravy fast stand or sauce boat fast stand, the covered sugar, and the teacup. Everything else comes directly from the Swing shape. All the flatware and all the other bowls, salt and pepper, the saucers, then it has a 36s bowl from Nautilus, a double egg cup from Wells, and then of course the Swing eggshell teapot that we saw here. So if you find Andover, it's usually going to have this pattern, this ribbon and star pattern. This gravy fast stand came from a Nautilus set, a Nautilus eggshell set, I should say, that had this treatment on it. So this was just picked up and thrown in. So don't expect to find a complete set of Andover with this particular decal. So we'll look at a couple advertisements. This one I wanted to show, it comes from 1940, and it's a Belknap hardware catalog. And it's showing a Nautilus eggshell, and it says border rose pattern. And I wanted to show that because so many of these catalogs didn't name the patterns. And we have a lot of collectors who say, well, what's the name of my pattern? What's it called? And you have to tell them, well, it's just a treatment number. It doesn't have a name. Well, sometimes the catalogs gave them names. Sometimes in this case they didn't. It's just border rose pattern. Or it might say something like rose spray or something very simple. Whereas on the other side of this advertisement, it has a lane pattern. They give this one a name. They could have easily called this just lattice border, but this is Eggshell Nautilus from 1940. And this is the trade advertisement from May of 1937 with Starflower. This is treatment number N1471. Starflower on the popular one of the popular numbers in the new craze-proof Eggshell Nautilus tableware. So this is their first eggshell line. In 1940, we have a theme eggshell trade advertisement showing the covered casserole. Theme eggshell is one of the few lines that didn't have a covered casserole per se. This is a nappy with a lid. So if you look like Rhythm, Brittany, or two other lines where instead of making a whole new shape, they just made a lid and then to put it on the nappy. I wanted to show this picture. This is from DuPont, a promotional picture that was taken in Atlantic City in 1940. I'll go ahead and take it out of the... And it says, color beauty in ceramics. Through chemical research, DuPont ceramic colors are used by the Homer Laughlin China Company of Newell, West Virginia. And somehow I'm going to have to get this photograph fixed. I don't know how. Probably Photoshop, because I think that this print is ruined. As you can see, what happened was that this color print over here that's in the paper, when this was closed, it imprinted on this photograph. But in here we see, this is, let's see, what's that say? Atlantic City DuPont exhibit, June 1940. We've got Fiesta on top, Eggshell Nautilus, Fiesta carafe with some World's Fair pieces, Georgia Martha Washington, Zodiac cup and saucer, the Seasons ashtrays, the Potter's plate, World's Fair plate, Nautilus eggshell, theme eggshell, some Serenade, some more Serenade and Fiesta. And at the bottom they've got Serenade price list, Fiesta price list, and some eggshell brochures. But I thought that was a nice photograph showing them all together at this time period in 1940. So yeah, I got to figure out how I can get that fixed, if it can be fixed. 1940. This is June of 1940. We've got Georgian eggshell being announced. So this came after theme eggshell. And here's some Georgian eggshell dinnerware offered in 1950. On the reverse it says dinnerware by Homer Laughlin and Pope Gosser. That's Homer, 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 Homer. Those four are. The others look like Pope Gosser. And December 1940, the English Regency pattern being offered on Georgian eggshell. And here we see the other ones mentioned, Nautilus, Swing, Theme, and Georgian. So that's a little bit about the theme eggshell and Georgian eggshell, Nautilus eggshell. Those three in particular I want to show. So let's do it like this. So we have Nautilus eggshell here, theme eggshell, and Georgian eggshell. Now Frederick Reed died in 1942, and there are no significant developments at Homer Laughlin after his death until we get to 1948 with the introduction of the Jubilee shape by Don Schreckengost. Even still, it's during this time period that these three shapes in particular really flourish. You know, any catalog you look at from the late 1940s, or I should say 42 to 48, you know, that 6-year span around World War II, you're going to see these three shapes. And it's really great that Homer Laughlin had these shapes to fall back on, because they become very good sellers in the late 1940s. They all continue into the 1950s. However, they start to diminish after you get more decal wear like Rhythm and Cavalier. Cavalier is another eggshell line that we'll look at later. But as I pan around and you look at some of this wear, it really has held up pretty good over time. The decals are bright, they're intact, they're not heavily scratched. The gold trim that we see on this casserole and the teapot look pretty good, as does the platinum on this Nautilus eggshell casserole. You look at this creamer, for example. This is 1939. That's 81 years old, and it looks like it was made last week. So this is some pretty good durable wear. You look at some of the other things that we've seen in previous videos, and some of it looks outdated, it looks antiquish, it looks discolored and crazed, but this stuff has really held up over the years. This is some of the best stuff that Homer Laughlin made in the late 1930s and 1940s. So if you ever want to collect any eggshell lines, these are the ones to go with. Again, they're Eggshell Nautilus, Swing Eggshell. This is a really nice line. You can get a lot of colors and bold decals in this one. Theme Eggshell, Georgian Eggshell, and Andover. So that's going to be it.